Okay, so here we have a very difficult house. This is a much more advanced house to even attempt to tackle. You will very, very rarely run into anything this complicated, but there are some features in here that you will see or some similar aspects of it. The best way to use this video, I have sped it up because my computer was crawling when trying to build this thing, and so it took me a few hours. So hopefully you can get something out of this video, even though I've sped it up quite a bit. So if you just kind of barely mastered the basics, this video might only be good for you to just kind of skim through and kind of get the idea of how to think about more complex shapes like this. If you're more advanced, take the time, pause, replay section by section, and really dissect how to tackle some of the things like this when you run across them. But let's get started. So I'm just going to start with this middle section here, not even the entire middle section. In reality, it would be better to draw this whole area as one piece. However, that's not going to be physically possible in Aurora, so I'm just going to draw this section here. I'll trace out here, and when I get here, I'm just going to cut in. I'm not going to worry about that weird sliver, and then I'm going to follow this step right there. At this point, I'm going to start deleting faces. So I'm trying to identify which faces are actually existent underneath or what shapes they'll become. So I can delete that end one. This one I can see that hip on the end, so I'll just raise it up to match that. Just trying to get all the gutters matched up to parts where you can see parts overlapping or sitting a bit higher, like this dormer section here. Sits a bit higher up on that middle roof. It just takes a lot of fiddling. Right now I'm trying to see where I need to place that roof face to create that more skinny one. I can see it was just lowering one and raising another. Right here I'm just messing with the pitch. Then when I turn on LiDAR, right now I'm just adjusting the main height to LiDAR, trying to find where the kind of average gutter height is. I just increase the pitch of everything, and then I make my adjustments from there. So you can see I had to make some adjustments beforehand that just to kind of get the basic shape down, so I understood that I had the right roof faces in the right spot. Then when I changed the pitch of everything, it kind of messed that up. So I have to make a lot of those adjustments again at the new base pitch that I put it at. But if I wouldn't have done that beforehand, I wouldn't have known for sure if I had the right ones. So that's why you can see me going through all this and kind of doing some similar things that I already had done. With complex houses like this, especially on this one where the LiDAR didn't necessarily match what I saw in the image, you're just trying to get the best of both worlds, kind of an average in between of a matching to what's in the image and what's to LiDAR. And right now it's just going roof by roof, changing the height, changing the pitch, kind of making adjustments here. You can see I brought that edge in. And that piece is good for now. You will see me make many changes to all these pieces as we go forward, especially the one we just drew. But for now, it's get a good place that I can start drawing this next section. Now, this one's pretty wacky because it's got that section on the left side here that has some very strange angles, very unnatural that you wouldn't see on very many houses at all. And so it requires you to do some weird shapes. And right now, I'm just kind of get the basic in, see the ones that I know how to do and how to make work. I'm just going to raise that triangle up to match that little section. I can see this whole dormer thing needs to be lowered a bit. And just raise the whole roof face to the LiDAR here. Increase the pitch. So this triangle back here is going to be one that I'm going to mess with a lot in this video. It's got to match up to the other roof face we drew on the other piece. Because really this should all be, these first two pieces I've drawn should all be one piece. So I have to make it look like it is. So I'm just going to raise that side up. And right now I'm trying to get the best that I can, those little weird angles. I won't actually get both of them. I'm going to draw one of them as a piece by itself. But I'm trying to get the back one here. You can see me messing with that piece right there to try and match it up to that weird diagonal face. The face that is kind of in between the triangle and that weird face that I just adjusted the height of. So that face right there, you can see me adjusting it to try. It's going to sit underneath the roof. We're never actually going to see it, but we kind of need that slant to create the other shapes on the other side of the roof. So it's always going to be hidden under the first piece we drew, but we'll never actually see it. Once again, just trying to get that diagonal to match up to where it shows in the image that there's sort of a diagonal roof. But it's all just about going through the roof faces, selecting different ones, changing the heights, changing the pitch of individual roof faces to create the weird shapes like that. You can see there, I didn't like what I had drawn there for that previous roof section that we drew, so the first section we drew, and I added a couple more vertices in there to try and make it not cut through the other side. So once again, just adjusting heights and pitches, making sure that everything's matching lighter. After I changed that shape, it really messed up where all my heights and pitches were because we had an extra face to deal with. Which means I have to go back and adjust all these to try and make them match both the image and to the new sections of the other shape we drew. So that back roof face is the one that needs to match up with the hip triangle right here. So I'm trying to get those two to match up the best that I can. And it's a real trick because it's not just a matter of matching up the two gutters and matching the pitch to it. Even though that is a big part of it, that's the main thing I'm trying to do, but I'm also trying to pay attention to how it's affecting the other faces around it. You can see right there I had a deleted vertice, which meant that it changed my whole shape, so I just had to select that same roof face, drag it all the way up until it looked like a triangle again. But you can see I have to change the pitch of that roof face that's sitting underneath next to the triangle, and that actually changes the shape of the triangle itself. That roof face right there. So I'm just messing with all of these, trying to pay attention to the changes that I'm making. Is it changing other roof faces that I don't want changed? I have to pay attention to all those different things. Otherwise, you may make a huge change, save it, and you'll move on, and then you won't realize it until later. It'll be too late to undo the mistakes you've already made on something this complicated. So as you can see, we're just getting closer and closer with each change we're making, but it's still not quite there. Just making sure everything's matching LiDAR and the image once again. Kind of moved on back to this other section. Now that I've made changes, it's caused some problems over there and sort of a ripple effect. So I'm just trying to make sure everything is matched up, not giving me too many problems at all down the line that I'm not seeing. So it's always good to just stop. If you're making a lot of changes in one area, just take a second, pause, look at all your other stuff you've built in that shape. Make sure you haven't messed anything up. And if you have, make the changes before you move on. So you can see that little piece there that is missing. I'm just going to draw that out real quick. I'm just going to draw it as a roof face underneath everything. I'm going to, at first I drew it flat, but that was actually the wrong way to do it. So I just ended up changing the pitch. You can see there, I just had it flat. So I ended up making it pitched again, and deleting all the faces but one. And just slowly lower it until it matches the image nicely. And that's close enough. And you can see that we've now created those two weird faces right there that kind of form that diagonal angle, the 45-degree angle there from the 2D view. I've now moved on to this other section. Drawing out the weird dormer, I have to do a cut in here for that gutter. Come all the way out here, bring it in a little bit where that dips in before that round dormer. You'll see I'll actually draw this wrong the first time. Most of it's correct, but just in that section on the right, I'm going to delete some vertices later. But for right now, I was pretty confident I had it right, so I was just going ahead and deleting all these faces. The bottom one is really just one face, even though the edge is a weird shape. Now there's a ridge up here that's going right through the middle. It's going west to east. Oh, mostly west to east. It's kind of northwest to southeast. But then also transitions into that other dormer that comes out the side. So I was trying to account for that. You can see what I'm doing right there. I create that new edge and I just raised that edge up to create the ridge I was talking about, and that gave me what I needed to then keep this section intact while still providing that ridge. It's again just taking it bit by bit as usual, identifying the features that I know how to do, get those out of the way first before I tackle these more complicated areas. Just making sure that multi-face dormer there is all equal in the triangles, that they're not too skewed from each other, that all the points meet up at one. And just changing heights, once again, matching the pitch to LiDAR. But also making sure that it's matching the image too. So you can see now that I'm actually making more changes to that first shape I drew at the beginning of the video, which then gives me a whole world of new problems to deal with. I've got to delete more faces. But the problem was that they were just cutting, corners of that roof face were cutting over through the roof faces of my other shape I was drawing, which wasn't going to work. If you've got those corners poking through a roof face, you're not going to be able to place panels there. So you got to do some creative problem solving. I knew I had to kind of trace around some of the ridges, delete some of the vertices I had on that first shape. And that was giving me problems with that hip on the end. So I'm just readjusting all my faces, making sure that they are matched up to LiDAR again, making sure the pitches are all correct. Just making sure that I have all these lined up. And sometimes it's just a matter of being good enough. Just trying to get it as close as possible, but it's not going to be perfect. Especially on something as complex as this, with how finicky and wacky Aurora is, you're not going to be able to get it exactly perfect. So just try and find that balance of, think of, okay, what's going to have panels placed on it? What could cause shading? What could change how I would lay out panels on a certain roof face? And just take all that into account and just think, what is the main function? You still want it to look as good as you can for the customer, but there's a certain balance you need to find in between the two when you're dealing with something that is taking you, over 40 minutes. That's pretty long for a pre-design. So you just want to make sure that you are still moving quickly, not, beating your head against a wall, and you're still going to make something that's going to work for both you and the customer. So right here, once again, I'm just adjusting the shapes because I still have pieces that are cutting through. So right now I'm creating a diagonal roof face on the bottom there in that corner. You can see that's going to sit underneath. We'll never see that roof face, but it will help it so nothing's poking through. And sometimes you need to do that if you have a ridge that's sticking and cutting through the opposite side of a intersecting roof like that you can see there. Just try and pitch that edge and then lower the edge until it sits underneath. Okay, so as you can see this house is a mess. I'm just trying to look and see where I still need to make adjustments. So you can see over here on this multi-face dormer, it's still not quite right. So I am just going through, making sure those triangles are all meeting up at the top at the same point, pretty equal in size and shape, but also matching to LiDAR. Little face here that I need to delete. And then there's this little triangle shed dormer in here that is a little tricky. I had to end up changing the shape on the bottom there. It's just one face, and it kind of sits in that wedge to create that sort of flat triangle piece. You won't be able to place panels on that, but it will change the amount of panels you could probably fit on that hipped side of that one shape. So now I'm just finding all the dormers, and I just drew out that regular hip dormer there. This is kind of a multi-face custom dormer I had to draw out. Just making sure it's all matched up to LiDAR. My computer's going very slow, not liking trying to change the height of that multi-face dormer, cutting into those already complicated shapes. So on these complicated houses, make sure you're saving often. Just putting that hip dormer on there. I've got this round dormer here. So remember how to do round dormers, you just do the regular gable dormer, then you add in the pitched folds on the sides. Then you're going to have to adjust the pitch of each of the faces by 2s. So think of the center 2 faces as a group and the outer 2 faces as a group. Just making sure they're all equal by adjusting those handles when necessary. If you see that's getting lopsided, start adjusting the handles again. Increasing the pitch of the outer faces and lowering the pitch of the inner faces to make it a little more round. Same thing here. Putting those pitch folds. I'll raise the height up. Then we just increase the pitch of the outer edges again. Lower the pitch of the inner edges. Adjust the handles to make sure it's all uniform and symmetrical. Okay, now we're going to draw this other piece here, sort of L-shaped roof. Just finding all those faces I don't need. And then I'll adjust the height of this one first. Make sure we have the right shape before we start matching everything to LiDAR again. Raise that height, match the gutters up, then increase the pitch of all the roof faces. Then start making adjustments to individual roof faces, like lowering the height of that one there. There's this last little roof section. And this one's a weird one because the image looks like it says it cuts above the roof we just drew previously, but LiDAR is saying it actually sits lower. So I had to kind of make my best guess as to which one was accurate. I just assumed there's something kind of weird going on at the roof, so I kind of just matched it to LiDAR. You can see there's a little section poking out there, and something to also be aware of is the whole entire perimeter of the roof is actually has a pitched fold on the bottom. It's hard to see in this image, but I'll show you a little bit in Street View. It is kind of a pain because it makes things a lot more complicated, but this one actually looks like a this one actually looks like a bigger change, and it's more of a shed dormer coming out of it. Now I'll draw these chimneys on here. There's quite a few of them on this house and different varieties. Just match all my chimneys to LiDAR. A little one here that I forgot to do. Okay, then there's these little gabled dormers behind a couple of these chimneys. So I'm just going to place them there. There's one there. Remember to convert to roof. And there's another one in this middle section right here. This one was breaking my roof a lot, so I just cut out the bits where it kept messing up and kept trying to make adjustments. But I finally was able to get it to take onto the roof without breaking everything. This was sitting up higher than it was supposed to for some reason, so I was changing the height of that. Make sure all the edges match up there. Now this is where I was talking about before. So I'm just putting in those pitched folds. Kind of on the bottom. In the image, you can actually see some of them from the 2D. It might be hard to see in the video, but if you zoomed in, I was able to see where they were in the image. But it was a lot more apparent in Street View. So I was trying to put them in this section here, and it was actually completely breaking my roof. So you can see it was already messing up stuff there. I had to kind of adjust to keep that hip in there. But then when I clicked out of it, it broke everything. And this happened several times. It was getting really frustrating. So if that ever happens and you just can't get it to work for the life of you, what I'm doing now is I'm building custom shaped dormers with the Q tool. And then I'm making them flush with the roof. Because the main purpose of putting those pitchfuls in is just to make sure that no one puts panels over where that bend is. Because they won't be able to, once they get out there, to actually install them over that. So it fulfills the same purpose. I've already got the pitch mainly matched up to the majority of the roof. And then on that bottom part, I'm just drawing those custom shaped dormers to make them flush so that no one puts panels over them. So it looks like our house is done. And now I'm just moving on to creating anything that could cause any shade. I'm drawing this house next door, looking at LiDAR, trying to see which trees are going to be a problem. There's that tree there, and then the rest of this area sits on a mountain. So I'm just drawing it as a roof like I did in the previous video. Just matching up the bottom to the LiDAR, increasing the pitch to match it. I'm drawing all these trees that are tall enough to cause a problem according to LiDAR, but I'm making sure to match up the branches and the shape to the image first. Then I change the height. There we go. This awful, awful house is done. It took forever, but hopefully you can learn some things from it, and mostly just how to approach complex things like this. The things that are required in the way to kind of mentally think about each piece and what to attempt and what to try to make more complex houses work.